I'm sure you all are always keenly interested in Germany because we have so many things to learn from Germany, particularly in economics field. So the German economic success is the envy of the world. At the center of the German economic success, there is what is called Mittelstand, or hidden champion, or medium-sized companies. The Korean economy now, Korean government now try to learn more from the German experience in this regard, because we have not very strong the middle-sized, small-sized companies sector here. And so this morning, we're very fortunate to have a speaker who will tell us how Germany was able to promote the middle-sized companies, Mittelstand, or hidden champion. Mr. Pert, the Friedrich, I'm sorry, leads the delegation to Korea, and he is the leading policymaker and the politician in one of the most important states in Germany. Since our ambassador, Rolf Maffay, is here, I thought it would be better for him to introduce our speaker this morning. So I asked him to introduce our speaker this morning. Ambassador, please.
존경하는 여러분, 안녕하십니까? 반갑습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to be here with you this morning and to introduce Minister Peter Friedrich. Minister Peter Friedrich is Minister for Federal Affairs, Europe and International Affairs in the state of Baden-Württemberg. He has a degree in public administration, and he was member of the Federal Parliament from 2005 to 2011. And since 2011, he is minister in the state of Baden-Württemberg. Now, where is Baden-Württemberg? To put it in general terms, it's on the southwestern part of Germany, with the French border, the Swiss border, and most importantly, the Bavarian border. Baden-Württemberg is the country of Mercedes-Benz, of Porsche, of Bosch, of Trumpf, of SAP in the software area, but it's also the motherland of Mittelstand, since if you talk about hidden champions and Mittelstand, there's hardly any place in the world where you would find a more dense array of such companies. But also Baden-Württemberg is the motherland of car industry, since the first car ever that drove from Mannheim to Pforzheim, which is 2 places in Baden-Württemberg, and it was driven by a lady, as all of us know. And now there is a very unique feature in Baden-Württemberg, and this is something which relates to the political scenario in Germany. Since behind the success of economy, there is also something which has to do with politics. And I would always say there are 2 elements. One element is what we call social partnership. And the other element is the way how we are doing democracy. Now he is a person who is really very much in the center of this kind of doing politics, which is causing some surprise here in Korea, in the sense that when the Grand Coalition started half a year ago, this was a big sensation. How could the big 2 parties go together? Now we have 2 chambers, the federal chamber and the chamber of the states. And the Chamber of the States, more than 50% of the laws, they also have to approve. Now, in the state of Baden-Württemberg, which is one of the wealthiest states in Germany, the government is not grand coalition. It is by the Social Democratic Party, where he's coming from, and the Green Party, the ecologists. So he has to build a grand coalition, including the Christian Democrats, the Social Democrats, and the Green, in order to be able to push a green button if there's a vote. And this is a kind of exercise and political culture which may also be very interesting to learn about. So I'm very happy that you are here, Minister Friedrich, and that you will speak to us about German Mittelstand, perhaps also a bit about politics. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Sekong, dear representatives of Korean business universities and research institutes, representatives of the press, ladies and gentlemen, dear Ambassador Raphael, thank you for this very polite introduction and thank you for your extremely cordial reception this morning. My sincere thanks for your interest in this event and in general for the interest and attentiveness that we have experienced in South Korea. President Sekong, I'm very happy that you invited me to speak to the distinguished lecture forum of the Institute of Global Economics on a topic that is of fundamental importance to my home state of Baden-Württemberg, the secret of Germany's performance, the Mittelstand economy. One of the purposes of this institute is to provide entrepreneurs and policymakers with expert knowledge through lectures and events such as these. I find such exchanges very exciting and important. International competition has been intensified by the globalized world with its global competitors. To continue being as well equipped for such competition as we have been up to now, we wish to reinforce our cooperation and exchanges. In our highly modern, complex world with changes at lightning speed, is necessary to be able to react quickly and accurately to changes. In that respect, I share your opinion, Mr. Sekong. Information is the cornerstone that makes it possible to adapt to changes in a globalized world and to find viable solutions. The list of participants in previous IGE forums is long and prestigious. I therefore feel greatly honored and I'm pleased to be able to make a contribution to this event today. But to be honest, nobody in Germany will believe when I tell you I held a speech at 7 o'clock in the morning. Normally in Germany, nobody here listened to speeches at that time of the day. So I'm really impressed by this audience. To introduce the topic of my speech, I would first like to tell you where I live, where I'm from. Ambassador Raphael already mentioned some typical characteristics of Baden-Württemberg. Until yesterday, I was traveling through South Korea on behalf of my state, Baden-Württemberg, together with my colleague Winfried Herrmann, who is Minister of Transport, and a distinguished delegation from the fields of business, science, and public administration. All participants of this delegation are contributing to the e-mobility cluster of Baden-Württemberg. As Minister for Federal, Europe and International Affairs, exchanges between Baden-Württemberg and Korea and the extension of our relationship is important for me. One focus is on medium-sized companies too, and now some facts about Baden-Württemberg. Baden-Württemberg is one of 16 federal states in Germany. We're the southwest of Germany. Germany is a member state of the European Union, and Baden-Württemberg feels as such as the heart of Europe. We have a population of about 10.8 million inhabitants, so about the size of Seoul. Our biggest population center is the region of Stuttgart, with 2.7 million inhabitants, comparing to Incheon, which is about 10.9 million inhabitants. Baden-Württemberg, South Korea is 3 times bigger. When you look at the surface area, we have about 35,000 square kilometers, Korea about 90,000. About 12% of our population is of foreign origin. With 389 billion euros, our GDP was one of the highest in Europe 2012. per capita, on a look on GDP per capita, we are number 3 in Europe. We are one of Europe's leading technology centers, and we are proud of that. We have a long-standing tradition of being innovative and creative in developing technologies for the future. And that is driven that we have almost no natural resources. There's no coal, there's no ore, we don't have much oil or things like that. We only have our creativity and the purpose of our tradition to be innovative. More than 80 universities in Baden-Württemberg form the basis of what is the most modern university system in Germany and I guess about Europe. And we continue to invest heavily in the future, allocating 5.1% of the GDP to research and development. Against this backdrop, our international positioning as a business location is very important to us, and we actively encourage the international orientation and networking of our medium-sized companies. Our corporate structure in Baden-Württemberg and Germany as a whole is organized differently than in South Korea. In that connection, I would like further clarify the role of medium-sized companies in Germany. In Germany, we categorize all companies that are between 10 and 500 employees as Mittelstand. The Mittelstand make a significant contribution to the economic force of Germany as a business location. The dynamics generated by medium-sized companies help us stay internationally competitive. That's why Mittelstand is the backbone of Germany's economy. That is especially true of Baden-Württemberg, where we have the most and the best medium-sized companies. I'm not only to say so. We are known for companies like Daimler, Porsche, Bosch, Trumpf was mentioned, SAP, but this is only 2% of our economy. 98% of the companies in Baden-Württemberg are small and medium-sized companies. In other words, they are essential for our state. This makes us really to the envy of the world. Many of our companies have been handed down from generation to generation. Thanks to them, Made in Baden-Württemberg stands for a high quality, precision and innovation. Mittelstand, it's also a kind of mindset, it's a way of life people are contributing to in Baden-Württemberg. On the one hand, nowhere else in Europe has so many companies that are already internationally active. On the other hand, it is often difficult for small companies to find their way to the international markets. For our export-oriented economy, about 2/3 of our enterprises are in international markets active. International presence is a must, especially to the Far East. Half of German companies with an annual sales revenue of at least 2 million euros maintain contracts abroad. An especially large number of those companies from Baden-Württemberg. Ladies and gentlemen, I see it Baden-Württemberg rests on 3 strong pillars. Strong municipalities, highly committed citizens, and a strong Mittelstand. A few weeks ago, the German newspapers Die Welt reported Baden-Württemberg is Germany's most popular business location. According to that article, 1/3 of all new settlements and expansion projects in Germany were carried out in our state. 224 projects in Baden-Württemberg versus 136 in North Rhine-Westphalia, 68 in Hessen and 44 in Bavaria. Baden-Württemberg is a strong business location with good infrastructure and great potential in terms of well-trained workers. That's the author of this study. As a state government, we create and maintain the best possible general conditions. And where useful and possible, we also provide targeted funding in order to compensate the structural and size-based disadvantages of medium-sized companies and to stimulate new developments. Our objective in Baden-Württemberg is to organize our economic and regulatory policies in such a way as to ensure that our success can become a permanent economic success story. We have many programs to subsidize medium-sized companies. I would now like to point out one instrument created quite a while ago that was originally used to promote medium-sized companies, the KfW. The KfW is the biggest national development bank in the world. It was founded to finance the reconstruction of German economy after the Second World War. The state branch of this national bank in Baden-Württemberg is the business development bank Landeskreditbank, known as L-Bank. One of its main tasks is to promote medium-sized companies. L-Bank has a special division called LEA that provides innovative young companies with venture capital funds. This makes it possible to finance family businesses handed down from generation to generation, while at the same time opening up for new innovative business sectors characterized by a higher degree of risk. It is new technologies especially that benefit from such funding services. The funding of medium-sized companies through low-interest lending programs help companies to make necessary investments on their own without relying to investors. That makes them more competitive and create new incentives for innovation in the economy. Our objective is to use such funding services to compensate for the structural disadvantages of medium-sized companies vis-à-vis major corporations. Many young startups profit from these programs and create new jobs. Large companies, too, can benefit from the innovation of small companies, apart from the fact that they offer opportunities for cooperation. Their extra innovation raises the status of business location as a whole. I want to mention also the role of small and medium-sized banks. Baden-Württemberg has a structure of local banks, mainly owned by the municipalities, who are financiers of Mittelstand companies. Another example of the creation of appropriate general conditions is the state research funding. There is no place in the world where businesses can afford by themselves the enormous research and development costs needed for industrial, ecological and digital upgrade. It is therefore only logical to develop public research funding systematically. Japan, South Korea and Israel, among others, are setting new standards of such funding, but we work also on it very actively. Baden-Württemberg has currently managed to strengthen its position in terms of the intensity of research and development with a share of 5.1 of the GDP. To turn innovations into flourishing companies, we use a tool as innovation vouchers to support small operations and medium-sized companies. We have developed a new innovation voucher for the creative industries, which still harbor considerable growth potential. We intend to continue advancing our innovation policy, for example, through a venture capital fund for highly innovative startups. In so doing, we are helping new technologies to break into the market and assisting their founders in the decisive development phase. But medium-sized companies in our state are also forging their own way ahead with innovation. Ecological and digital upgrading has become a part of practically all the classic economic sectors. In Baden-Württemberg, companies have made great progress in that field. New products and highly complex intelligent services are giving medium-sized companies an advantage on all world markets. Our medium-sized companies react flexibly, quickly and, above all, independently to changes in market demand. Conservation of resources and energy, environmentally friendly products and methods are the top of their agenda. They are not waiting for governmental regulations or governmental funding, and certainly do not need the government to tell them to get on their way to modernization. They act on their own initiative, promoting ecological and digital changes under their own responsibility. In doing so, they not only secure the future of their companies, but also make an essential contribution to shaping our future lifestyle and society. In my opinion, the success story of Mittelstand cannot be explained without mentioning the model of professional training in Germany. I would therefore like to give you a very quick overview. We have what is called a dual education system, which combines practical training at a company with theoretical studies. Dual education is a special feature of Germany that has aroused worldwide interest. It enables a smooth, well-adjusted entry in the professional world. Graduates of such courses are highly qualified, skilled workers who are in high demand, and our market needs them urgently. Employees and employers alike appreciate this education model because it is systematically oriented towards professional practice. And it's unthinkable without the social partnership the ambassador already mentioned. Companies and trade unions and the state are working closely together and working on a social consensus. For example, the curricula of professional degrees in Germany is defined by working groups of employers and trade unions together. The state is providing the schools or the colleges, but the curricula is developed by the companies, by the economy by itself. And trade unions came into a co-management role by this way to develop future workforce. This includes at last 100,000 companies in the commercial and the service sector with over 1.1 million employees in total, training nearly 40,000 young people each day. They are one of the main reasons why our company is doing so well and prospering. The dual education model has aroused great interest in Europe and the rest of the world. We are working together closely with several European partner countries that intend to introduce a dual model of this kind to be guided by it. Medium-sized companies are available for the practical part of the education and therefore make a decisive contribution to our dual model of success. In order to cope with the international market, our medium-sized companies are organizing themselves into global networks. The name Baden-Württemberg is well on its way to become an internationally known symbol of ecological and digital innovation in business, although nobody can spell it. This is where my trip to South Korea comes in again. Our economic delegation frequently travel all over the world. This policy opened doors not only for the Mittelstand representatives in our delegations, but also for top-class scientists and researchers. And why we come to South Korea? In the 1960s, South Korea was still one of the poorest countries in the world. If you picture that and compare it with the current situation, you can see that enormous progress made in this country. Today, South Korea is home to major industrial and technological groups that are successfully all over the world. Products from South Korea are sold in every store in Baden-Württemberg. The research and development infrastructure has been developed greatly. It's primarily application-oriented. It offers a sustainable basis for making further progress in high technology sector. And it offers exciting new possibilities and opportunities to stakeholders from Baden-Württemberg in this field of business and science. The best kind of cooperation is where both sides profit equally. I think we Germans have something to learn from the enthusiasm which a country like South Korea pushes ahead with its development. For example, the commitment and thirst for knowledge of its young students, the enthusiasm about new technology innovation in a society, or the ambitions of broad segments of the population to improve their socio-economic status through their own efforts. On the other hand, a country like South Korea can also learn and benefit from our experience and achievement. Cooperation between South Korea and Baden-Württemberg is already close and diverse, especially in the field of business and science. Many firms from Baden-Württemberg and other parts of Germany have been operating in South Korea for years now. And I'm well aware that their presence here secures many jobs in Baden-Württemberg and the rest of Germany too. With trips like these, we give companies and others opportunity to discover this market. Economic relations are therefore a key aspect to this trip. We meet our counterparts face to face, obtain up-to-date information about the markets and lay the groundwork for future cooperation projects. I therefore hope that this trip will allow us to make concrete business contacts for small and medium-sized companies. We also intend this trip to be followed up to the trip by Winfried Kretschmann, the Minister-President from Baden-Württemberg, who visited Japan and South Korea in May 2013 in his capacity as President of the Bundesrat. At that time, the politics in Baden-Württemberg and Germany as a whole were met with truly excellent appreciation and estimation. Besides the delegation's numerous meetings with the top-ranking officials, I would like to point out the extremely interesting discussion between Mr. President and President Park, who also showed great interest in the topic of Mittelstand. I'm very happy that President Park is going to visit Germany in the late March 2014. On the previous trip too, we were accompanied by a delegation of high-ranking representatives from the world of business and science. Besides political meetings, the focus of that trip was the energy transition in Germany, energy research, and the subject of renewable energy sources. Now we come to the keyword of the energy transition in Germany. You may be asking yourself, what does the abandonment of nuclear energy in Germany have to do with medium-sized companies? You will agree that energy is a very important subject for all of us. Let's take the example of South Korea. South Korea's economy and structural circumstances and conditions are completely different in certain respects, of course. But here too, there is a strong interest in developing regenerative energy resources. Here too, the objective of sustainable development. It's a path of ecological renewal. At the Daimler Group's New Year reception, Mr. Zetsche, Daimler's chairman on the board, recently stated the objective that the group is working toward. We are going to bring the energy transition to the streets. And that is exactly what we expect. Production processes have been redesigned and made more energy efficient. If possible, plants should produce their own energy. Any resulting surplus energy will be fed into the power grid, and the cost of upgrading the grids will be shared by all. Our industry, large and medium-sized companies, have recognized the potential of innovation in this area, including on the international market. None less than Ban Ki-moon, South Korea's ex-foreign minister and current UN Secretary General, proclaimed a worldwide Green New Deal years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, South Korea already ranks as Germany's fourth biggest non-European trading partner after the USA, China and Japan. Nevertheless, there is still room for progress, both in import and export end. Strengthening our economic, scientific and technological relationship in this key sector, therefore, has great potential. Ecological upgrading based on the central themes of sustainability is a central project of our state's government. The impression I get from my countless meetings here is that economy has already advanced very far. I have come to know companies that use new technologies and methods to reduce their consumption of material drastically, for example. Factories that generate their own power supply. Companies that boost their energy efficiency by using state-of-the-art combined heat and power plants, which protect their budgets and the environment at the same time. Many companies see this topic could open up future markets in an energy-hungry world. The motto is intelligent growth. Intelligent growth requires interconnected, highly flexible control systems such as smart grids as a part of energy transition. The principle is that machines should communicate with one another. The decisive question is whether we can maintain our current advantage through goal-directed research and development. That is not a problem for major corporations. They have their own research centers for years. That is more difficult for small and medium-sized companies, however. That is why our state government insists on promoting such research through tax benefits. At 4.4 billion euros a year, our expenditure on university science and research has reached record high. We are setting up a pioneering green tech power grids together with our state environmental technology agency, Umwelttechnik BW. We are uniting forces and bringing together participants from all relevant areas. We are paving the way for Baden-Württemberg to be able to become a pioneer region in the field of sustainable mobility. The supporting pillars in this policy are the State Agency for E-Mobility, the State Agency for Light Construction and the new Helmholtz Institute for Battery Research in Ulm. Car2Go in Stuttgart is one of the examples of interest in the pilot project. Moreover, we are investing in research and development on innovative energy storage units and intelligent power grids. We are doing so, we are laying the groundwork for the storage of wind and solar power, intelligent load management and the electric vehicles of the future. We want to make Baden-Württemberg the forerunner of environmentally friendly trade and industry and will support the introduction of resource-efficient technologies in companies. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the greatest respect for what your medium-sized companies are achieving in your country, such that we in politics and civil society have to think about even harder in this question of how to change the generic conditions in order to facilitate business for them. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the new topic. The challenge of medium-sized companies must be met in order to remain successful. A number of different challenges has to be faced. The demographic situation in Germany clearly showed that we will have to rely on immigration by qualified workers if we want to maintain and develop the position of our companies on the world markets. That is equally true for both large and medium-sized companies. In our country, people are traditionally quite willing to integrate immigrants. What we still need to work on is developing a more goal-directed culture of hospitality for people from other countries, people who will lend us a helping hand to accomplish something and to create a livelihood for themselves and their families in Germany. According to the available analysis, Baden-Württemberg currently has a shortage of trained technical specialists, engineers, computer scientists, care personnel and educators. To facilitate immigration to Baden-Württemberg, we have prepared the State Recognition Act. This creates the necessary conditions to make use of the potential of immigration. This will help Baden-Württemberg's economy as well as the immigrants themselves, who will be able to work in the profession for which they were trained. We have therefore founded an alliance for skilled workers with employers and trade unions, municipalities and employment agencies. With this joint alliance, we are addressing one of the main concerns of medium-sized companies, the shortage of skilled workers. We can no longer allow a situation in which qualified immigrants have to be hired as assistants because their qualifications are not officially recognized in Baden-Württemberg. We adopted a whole package of measures and the initial signs of success are already apparent. Since then, such alliances have been formed in all regions of Baden-Württemberg based on a statewide model. Economic development requires a working infrastructure. We have a high level of infrastructure, but we certainly need to catch up in certain areas. We recognize that there are problems such as worn-out roads, school buildings that need to repair, outdated lecture halls, etc. We have therefore been forced to increase spending in certain areas as renovation of state buildings, maintenance of state roads, investments in hospitals and flood protection, to give a few examples. To create childcare places, one of the justified demands made by the economic sector, we have entered into agreement with municipalities on a triple state resources. The development of full-day schools is just important. That would require 10 billion euros nationwide. Otherwise, we will be unable to cope with challenges of ensuring sustainable infrastructure. Our budgets are challenging here too, but they are simultaneously need to cut spending. We will make sure that the company's investment capabilities, their ability to generate equity capital and use to develop long-term strategies encouraging innovation and technological leadership are not impaired. Ladies and gentlemen, Daimler comes from Baden-Württemberg. People in our country used to always to say, when Daimler catches a cold, the whole state gets a flu. There may still be something of that today, but it's even truer to say that when medium-sized companies are doing well, the state can't complain. And I'm glad that we scarcely have anything to complain about the economic standpoint. I'm glad that we have such a successful bottom line with our Mittelstand Economy. Germany's economic outlook for this new year seems promising. But that must not make us careless or too cocky. Economic success, like social cohesion, cannot be taken for granted, not even in Baden-Württemberg. We need to make an effort constantly and take new paths in order to remain successful. So the topic of medium-sized companies has many different phases. But I hope I have been able to point out a few of these aspects to you in this lecture. And I'm looking forward to the discussion that follows, where we will be able to examine this topic in greater depth. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for very, very interesting and actually fascinating, illuminating presentation. You convinced us, again, as expected, that we have so much to learn from your experiences, and we can draw various valuable lessons from German experiences from many fields, particularly in the Mittelstand. And also, as Ambassador mentioned earlier, during the course of the Q&As, maybe you will enlighten us about your political developments there as well, because this grand coalition seems to me in Korea is far beyond our own imagination here. Two opposing big parties work together, and our politicians should learn the experiences in German political the situation today. Well, with this, why don't I invite questions and comments from the floor? I'm sure there will be many. Any questions? Yes, Dr. An.
Mr. Peter Friedrich, thank you very much for your really insightful presentation. Maybe Korean students, especially in my generation, when we attended primary school, we all the time learn, Koreans must learn from the miracle of the Rhine River. I'm really, pleased to tell you this. And then Koreans, we should create our own miracle from the Han River. That much Koreans really has been emulating, German success stories. Well, Korean economy at this point really dominated by large business, what we call 재벌, conglomerate, and they actually, they share a major portion of the Korean the exports and the total sales volume, and also in terms of having very high caliber, manpowers. As a result, Korean government to provide a whole set of incentives to promote Korean medium-sized industries, ranging from, taxation and concessional loans from the banks, etc. Just numerous incentive systems. So my question is that in Germany, do you have such a set of the incentive system to promote your Mittelstand, economy? That's the first question. And second question is, you said that your medium-sized enterprises has brought up from generation to generation how your inheritance tax system, they operate. Say grandfather's generation, and when, the inherited it to the, next generation, how the tax system, operate. In Korea, we have a rather very heavy, tax system, so that the, father's generation sometimes wish to avoid, inheriting their property and business entity to their children, next generation. And then third question, I think hearing from your story, I don't know whether you have the Silicon Valley type of model in the United States, where you can see bunch of venture businesses and funded by venture capitals, angel funds, so on. Because you said this is the dominance of small, medium-sized enterprises brought up generation to generation. I don't know, cannot provide a appropriate, business culture in which a new entrant with new ideas, venture businesses can flourish in the United States, at the Silicon Valley. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, yes. Okay, why don't you respond?
So, thank you for your question. First of all, we have no special tax incentives to small and medium-sized enterprises. We have the corporation tax system is the same for small and medium-sized enterprises up to big companies, like I mentioned before. But we have a special kind of a type of small enterprises, which mean they are personal entrepreneurs. So you don't have a foreign investor, or you don't rely to an investor that is owned. The company is owned by your family, and you're taxed as person. So you have for very small, the bottom of small and medium-sized enterprises, craftsmen and, for example, doctors normally in Germany are self-employed and self-reliant. And for them you have only the personal taxation system. And, but we have a two-level taxation system. We have local taxes, and we have the overall German national taxing system. Also, we have 5 levels of administration, from the local, from the municipality up to the European Union. You only have 2 taxation levels, and therefore the tax system is nearly the same for all companies. We don't have special tax incentives. We are discussing about doing it for research and investments on developing, but in fact we have no special tax subsidies or something like that. The second question, the heritage tax in Germany is very low, and we have a special, we had a reform 6 years ago, I think, and when you keep your employees, you can get a tax reduction from the to the heritage tax. So we try to have a tax incentive for employment for the heritage tax. And the last question, I think the very special about Baden-Württemberg and the situation of small and medium-sized enterprises is that we are organized so decentrally. So we have, when you look at our capital city, Stuttgart, the city itself has only 500,000 inhabitants. And this is the biggest city in Baden-Württemberg. So you see you have, and it's very typically to Baden-Württemberg that you come to a small village somewhere in the Black Forest on the Swabian Alps or something like that, or in my home region, the Bodensee region. You come to a small village with 200 inhabitants, but there is a global player. A small and medium-sized enterprise doing business in South Korea, having their business in a small village with 200 inhabitants. And that's very typical to Baden-Württemberg. So you don't have a kind of cluster specialization when you say, okay, we have some hotspots for some industry. For example, IT industry is located in a region of Karlsruhe with SAP and Waldorf and something like that. But in fact, you have a spread all over the whole country, and in the smallest village you have the most promising enterprises. And I think this special idea of decentralization means you have a strong identity and a very close social network between enterprises, companies, and the municipalities, and it's completely normal that a mayor also feels himself responsible for the success of the company in his village. And even the trade union has local, elected by the workers, local representatives or presidents of their trade union group, and they also feel like co-managers in the companies. So you don't have a kind of a technical specification or something like that. We are very strong, of course, in advanced manufacturing all over Baden-Württemberg, but you have this special linkage between society and economy on a local level. I think that's a different role model to for example, Silicon Valley, but it works.
Yes, Dr. Jung, please.
Excuse me, Jung Gu-hyun from teaching at the KAIST. Thank you for your presentation. Now, German economy is doing very well, especially after 2008 crisis. And Mittelstand has been there for a long time. So the current performance of German economy, I don't think can be explained by the presence of Mittelstand, because Mittelstand has been in existence for, I would say, several decades. So we need a new explanation. And my question is, what did Germany do to bring about this current performance? And I hear Germany went through major reforms between 2001 and 2005. So could you explain a little bit about what Germany did and why Germany undertook those reforms in the first half of the last decade? Second question is this. Germany has one of the highest age ratio, meaning 65 years old people out of total population. I think you have like 23%, second or third largest in the world, and you're still maintaining relatively good fiscal soundness. So how do you maintain fiscal soundness? What is the mechanisms which force states and the federal government to maintain fiscal stability? Thank you.
Well, that's absolutely true. Thank you very much for the question. That's absolutely true that Germany had major policy changes in the years 2003 to 2005 with great political discussion, and even the government changed about this reform policy. So Chancellor Schröder's reform policy was successful, but not for himself. And that's not, perhaps that's already a part of the answer, because we had a time where the government in Germany made a policy which was not looking on the success in the next election. It was looking on the success to change our economy. And of course we have also big efforts which are still lasting for the society with sacrifice of people. So for example, we reduced the unemployment payments on a very low level. We mobilized a lot of people to work again. So we had, in 2005, we had about 5 million unemployed people in Germany. At the moment, we are 2.5 million. But the price for that was to have a low-income sector in Germany. So we have about 10 million people in Germany which are earning very low wages. At the moment, we haven't an increase of wages for over 10 years overall. And we especially have in low-qualified service, we have an increase of employment in Germany. What brings us to a threat for the future, because we have, for example, in Baden-Württemberg, we have a lack of 500,000 skilled workers until 2020, 500,000. And we are not able to maintain this supply of trained workforce out of this low-income sector at the moment. And that is what our biggest challenge is, to invest in education, and not only in education of children, but in lifetime education. That we can bring people to learn, to qualify themselves, even if they are already in the 40s and the 50s of their life. That's a big problem to us at the moment. So the performance at the moment is very good. Not only by the reforms of 2004 and 5, it's also a result of our reaction to the world economic crisis of 2008, because we decided at that time that we give subsidies of our social security system that people stay in work. And we moved about 120 billion euros for 1 year as an economic impact, and mainly for a stimulus. And the main way of making a stimulus was paying people, enterprises to keep their people in work. And I think one of the success stories is that they invested in research, development, and education, and dual education and training, even in a situation of crisis. So normally the first cost to be cut in the enterprise is the cost for education and for training, and they did not, because we subsidized it, highly subsidized it by public in 2008 and 2009. The question about fiscal stability. Well, we have, first of all, in Germany, we are very close to our constitution, and we have a written constitution. And for Germany, for Germans, a written constitution is the most important thing at all. So, and if in the constitution there is a law, an article that we have to keep a balanced budget. That's a constitutional law. It's not so easy, especially in time of economic crisis. But it's also a kind of way of life. So especially in Baden-Württemberg, making savings is something about feeling moral, and people feel good about saving money. They feel bad about spending money. And we build cars we mainly don't drive. We first drive them if we can have sold them to others. So that's at the same time, it's even if it's economic, perhaps better to make deficit spending. So in an economic situation, people say no, we shouldn't make any debts. First, we earn less, or we invest less, or something like that. Normally, people don't like to make any kind of deficit spending, and that's that's a rule in our constitution on the one side. On the other side, it's also a mental. It's a characteristic of people. And another explanation is that we have a very also is this model of decentralization, because we give the possibility to decide on questions as close to people as possible. So every community has fiscal autonomy. So they have to get a balanced budget by themselves. So you never have the situation to blame someone or another. You cannot decide spending money without having it at the local level. That's a big difference, for example, to the crisis states of Europe at the moment, like Spain or Greece or something like that, where you have always a difference, and a local difference between decider and payer. And that's completely different in Germany, and I think that's a very excellent way of organizing the state.
Let me elaborate further on Professor Chang's question. You answered very well about how the employment in Germany was it kept well. You know, unfortunately, Germany once was called as segment of the Europe, and in some brief period, though, mostly due to the rigid labor market and some too generous the welfare system. And the Chancellor Schroeder introduced what is called, as you know, Agenda 2010. I suppose Dr. Chang was referring to Agenda 2010. The essence of Agenda 2010, I understand, is the making labor market more flexible and reduced some of the too generous part of the welfare system. with this and the introduction of euro, Germany could keep competitiveness, and the rest is in history, and Germany is doing so well today. So this labor market flexibility, actually one of the main challenges for Korea today is how to make labor market more flexible so that more jobs can be created. So this is one of the very, very critical lessons we can learn from Germany. And this is one. Another point, another question or the observation I would like to ask you to make is regarding the dual education system, which is education, which is very, very critical for us again. You know, the Korean high school graduates, up until recently, more than 80% of high school graduates go on to universities and colleges. In Germany today, maybe your state, maybe less than 40% goes. So I would like to know how this kind of you did mention in your presentation briefly the education system can be sustained, and high school graduates are happy with the current education situation in Germany. How parents and students are happy about this the situation they have today. If that's in Korea, I think everybody will really be a real disastrous situation can occur here in Korea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. You just mentioned one thing. Of course, we have kind of the profits of reform policy at the moment. But in fact, it's also another thing, that's the euro. And if you look, Germany had a severe economic crisis in the 19th due of the exchange rate of the Deutsche Mark. And at the moment, the euro and the exchange rate to the dollar and the yuan is at a very low level. It's for Germany itself, it's too low. Normally, the exchange rate has to go up, but because of the crisis in some parts of Europe, the euro stays at a very low exchange rate, and that's why our export industry is doing very, very well at the moment, because they are earning a lot of money by this exchange rate. And this is a kind of windfall profit of the euro crisis to Germany. Yeah? And nobody wants to hear that in Germany, but in fact it is so, that we have this kind of windfall profits of euro crisis. And Germany always was on Mittelstand and export orientation, but it never worked so well because we hadn't this kind of euro crisis, which promotes our Mittelstand at the same situation. And we should be clear about that, but in fact most of Germany thinks that's all the benefit or the result of our reform agenda. It's coming together. The second thing is, for example, in my hometown or in my home region, I have one of the best universities, University Konstanz, which is excellent university in Germany. But if you look, the median wage of an academic is under the median wage of an industrial worker. So if you want to earn money in a time where you're founding your family and you get kids and you want a house and you need a car, you have strong incentives to work in the industry and to go by the dualistic training system, education system, because as assistant at the university, you won't never earn the money like working in the aluminium profile industry, which is next door to the university. So there is a strong incentive. But it is the, I think we have a tradition about 500 years, meanwhile, in Germany on the dual education system. And you cannot, some European countries at the moment are trying to implement the system also, but it's nothing to can turn on overnight. You have to work on this, and it is embedded in the society. And it's very strongly embedded, because your trainer in the training in the company is done by the same man who is your trainer in the soccer team, for example, in the village. And the company is a sponsor of the soccer team. And that's all on a very local level. So you have this, and people feel responsible for educating the young ones, and doing this always in the combination of theory and practice. And it's really half time spent in practice in the enterprise and in the schools. And our schools are very close to the companies. And I think the most successful element of this dual education system is it's so close to the labor market, because the companies they have to pay a wage to their apprentice. They are students, but they are paid for their time being students. So they are already co-workers in the company. And because the company has to pay them a wage, it's a low wage, but because they have to pay a wage, they only will hire those who they need. So the education system is very, very close to the needs. And the complete state-run or public education system is trying to fill the gaps which are still there after this education system. So we have, of course, have engineers, and we have software engineers, and we have doctors and scientists which are taught and trained in our universities. But even we have now the dual university, that people are already working in companies and being students at university. So it's this dual way is very close meanwhile, and you have very, very few curricula, very few careers where you can say it's only in a complete public or state-run theoretical level. It's only for politicians, perhaps. I don't know.
Okay, I'm sure there are more questions and comments. It's a fascinating the German story to learn. But we have time constraint here. Actually, the Minister Friedrich is scheduled to have this media interview afterwards, so we have to end at this point. And again, I'm sure we can go on all day, and again, so many other things to learn from German experiences. Of course, we have something to share with you too, but so much to learn from you. And since we envy the German economic success so much, so that this year we already invited the number of German speakers. Please, Ambassador has been facilitating these occasions. Please bring in more German speakers in the village, and please visit us more. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.